Hello and welcome once again to Dave and Marlow, the Little Blazers Edge podcast that tries hard and usually brings you some quality content about your Portland Trail Blazers. I am Dave Deckard here together with Marlow Ferguson Jr., the most amazing analyst you can find this side of the Mississippi, except he's on that side of the Mississippi. Actually, Marlow, how are you doing?
We're pretty good. Last time we talked, we were on a long losing streak, coming in with 2 wins. So always good to have those good spirits coming with us today for this podcast.
Yeah, except you know what? I had just something terribly disturbing today. I mean, the moment that every father fears. And my son is 15 years old now, and we put off the bad things as much as possible, but it finally happened today. He came to me and he said, "Dad, I got to tell you, I heard this song. It was called Don't Stop Believin', and I loved it." And I'm going, "No, that's Journey. You can't like Journey." He's like, "Yeah, they're really, really good." I'm like, "Oh, no. That's just terrible. I can't." Oh, so yeah, now I'm kind of processing my son being a Journey fan.
Oh man, at least that's a classic. I mean, if there's any silver lining to it, that's a classic song. It could have been worse. So.
I know, but it's like a gateway. Pretty soon it's going to be REO Speedwagon and then Styx, and then he's going to be up in his room listening to Steve Winwood and Peter Frampton.
I haven't heard of any of those people, but
good. Can I send?
Take your word.
Can I send him to live with you for a month? It would send him away to camp, music camp.
Oh my goodness.
Man. So anyway, the Blazers are doing better than that. Great win on the road against Utah and great win at home against Indiana. What did you take from that Utah game? Let's dive right into it. Frankly, that one surprised me.
2 words, Anthony Simons. I think that if he's playing them again, he's going to be licking his chops because they did not adjust whatsoever in that first half. And it was just, he was making shots where you were thinking to yourself, like, he's got to miss eventually. And he didn't. It was just, you can kind of call it off from the couch. Yusuf Nurkic, dribble handoff, pick and roll, right into a shot. And the Jazz weren't ever going to step up to the level of the screen, and they were able to ride that momentum. So it was a great win, a great high character win for them.
It's one of the things about the Blazers this year is that they do make you adjust, right? I mean, so if you go up on the screen, they're going to either go past or they're going to pass it, right? But if you don't, they can hit the shot. And God forbid you give both of them space, because Nurkic rolling to the hole is a pretty good option too. So like whatever, I think that's a little bit of the difference between this year's Blazers and past years. Whatever you take away, they will find something else. It won't always work, but it's there and they're comfortable doing it.
And I think that's the luxury of having a team that has 3 20-point scorers, is that you can't take away everything. And I think it made all the difference in the Indiana game, because in that Clippers game, when Grant and Simons had cooled off, they had trouble finding offense, had trouble figuring out where they were going to go. You had a third player to that. It's just an entirely different monster. But I think at the same time, Portland they looked like a team that benefited from the rest advantage that they had. They had a 2-day layoff before the Indiana game. The Jazz were on the second half of a back-to-back, and the Pacers didn't have Tyrese Halliburton. So I think it bodes well tonight for the Blazers when they play Denver. But they definitely benefited from having some rest advantages, as well as having one of their key stars back. So a lot of things going for them at this point in time.
Yeah, we'll take on Lillard in just a second, but I agree with you. And this, one of the things to be excited about is that Portland has been grinding pretty hard in this first 24 games. Now, they did have a little mini break kind of halfway through it, and they have one now, but they kind of need that. I mean, they need that physically a little bit because they play their starters a lot, but also I think they just need it mentally, emotionally. Look, they dove into this season with training camp, new people, here we go, play. And it really worked for them, but the NBA catches up with you, right? Both physically and opponents. These little short breaks will probably allow the Blazers to reset and to reframe certain things to where they come out better on the other end, both physically and in terms of their comfort level with each other, I think.
I think it's exactly that too. On the Blazers broadcast during that Pacers game, they had kind of talked about it. Chauncey Billups saying he was going to kind of shut it down for a few days, and having that 3 or 4 day break in between action, I thought it was huge for them. So I think it's a big thing in having a player's coach, where a player like that, like Chauncey Billups, knows that, sometimes you can play too much basketball. And they had this situation in the preseason where they kind of struggled, and he was like, okay, just get back to just playing basketball, just not thinking too much about it. So that's one of the keys in the grind of a long 82-game season. So I think it's going to really bode well for them, especially since they've kind of gotten past the hard part of the schedule, and it's going to get easier for them. You can see them stringing together some wins now over the next couple of weeks.
It's super interesting because this is something you would do with a veteran successful team, right? But the Blazers are actually a really young team and only modestly successful so far. So it's a bold move. And I think you're right. There are a lot of coaches who would compensate for that by saying, okay, now we got 3 days to practice. Let's drill this in the young guys. Caveat, asterisk, the Blazers have also suffered a lot of injuries. So they have to be careful, like not to overstress. But I do agree with you that it's an interesting and bold and probably productive move for Coach Billups to treat this like a veteran team, even though they're kind of not. And I think part of that also is his trust in Lillard, who obviously came back on Sunday.
I think it's going to benefit them too in just the way that they play. To kind of go along with your point, they're a young team. They're gritty, they're aggressive, feisty, and they play a little bit of a run and gun style. The pace doesn't show it, but they play with a lot of intensity. So having those breaks in between action is going to be huge. And I think you can kind of see it in the records. This team is 3-1 when they've had 2 or more days off. So having that's going to be key. And it's a small sample size, but kind of shows you what this team is capable of when they can get legs under them. Josh Hart comes to mind immediately. They brought out in that Pacers game. He could have rested. He could have gotten a couple more days on that ankle, and came back fresh. But he's going to be really fresh now. We talked about Gary Payton II being able to come back pretty soon. So everything's kind of rolling their way at this point in time as far as health goes. And you just hope that Damian Lillard and those guys kind of continue to, get back on the right track with that as well.
Now let's hold it there for a second. I mean, again, we're going to get to Lillard, but I'm getting a lot of questions about Gary Payton and whether he's really coming back and when he's coming back. And it's a huge fog, right? I mean, a couple of writers have written about it, but it's mostly been speculation. First of all, I mean, do you think he's really coming back? And second of all, how much difference is he going to make?
I think that the core situation that he had is no joke. That's a spot on the body where it's like if you twist wrong, you adjust wrong. It's tricky. I think sooner or later he's going to be back out there and he's going to make a huge difference. I think off the court, you're already starting to see that. The Blazers commentators, they love to kind of joke about him stealing the candy on the sidelines and how great of a rapport he's built with Jeremy Grant and those guys. So I think he's going to be a hand in glove fit. No pun intended to the to the Gov nickname, but defensively he's a great player. And I don't think you can have too many of those kind of players. Especially since it's so hard to sustain that level of play every night. Having another guy that you can kind of plug in when Josh Hart's not playing well, Justice Winslow's not playing well, and you got different guys you can put in. I think it's going to make this a lot easier for this Blazers group. And if he's made any kind of incremental agreement or adjustment in his offensive game improvement, it'll be a huge bonus for this team.
Yeah, I mean, depth, something they so sorely need, especially with these injuries. Veteran presence, something they sorely need even when they're healthy. Because look, okay, Shaedon Sharpe, brilliant sometimes, non-factor other times, right? Even Nasir Little, I think he's more of a factor more often, but he's really, really injured right now. He's out with a broken hip. And also, look, he's been impactful. I love how he's playing, but he hasn't been the kind of impactful that makes you sit up and go, oh, okay, this is it. I mean, they're still kind of looking for that mid-bench role player, right? And Payton certainly could qualify.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. We've seen the Blazers really get sort of creative with their lineups. I love the way they ran with the Jazz with the almost like a 4-big lineup where they had Nurkic in there. They had Nurkic started, Watford started, Jeremy Grant, and Justice Winslow. So you're putting a lot of size out there. And that's one of the things I liked about this Blazers group this year is that they've been very versatile in terms of what they've done. And just adding Graydon Payton's going to make a huge difference to that, just in terms of the lineups you can play. And we've seen young guys like Jabari Walker step in 6 minutes in and make an impact. So I don't think it's going to take long for Payton to make an impact just because of what his game is. Hustle's one of those things you don't lose. A jump shot kind of comes and goes, but hustle and ambition is one of the things you can bring in any situation. So I don't think it's going to be too difficult for him to fit.
Yeah, and especially, defensively, honestly. That's still the point. Well, I shouldn't say that, because there have been games where the Blazers have kind of wilted offensively, and they have no chance in that. If the offense not working, they can't win. But Damian Lillard being back should solve a lot of that. And when they were, the problem is they only had two, right? They had basically Grant and Simons. One of them's off. It doesn't work. With the three-headed monster in there, the Hydra, they're going to be okay offensively. But they still have defensive breakdowns, okay? They've got to solidify that. It's not, their ceiling seems pretty good right now. That floor is still a little bit shaky, and I think Peyton and those mid-bench players are the ones who raise that floor.
Yeah, you can never have too many of those guys. And I like what the Blazers have kind of done recently. They haven't went to the zone as much, just from what I've seen. They're kind of trying to rely on the man-to-man principles and trying to just match up with guys. So I think it's a nice change. And I like that even though it's had some success, you love to see Chauncey Billups making adjustments, trying different things, seeing how they work out. They had a point in that Pacers game where the Pacers were basically destroying them on fast break transition opportunities. And in the second half, they kind of locked that up. So having a coach and a defensive scheme in which you can make adjustments quickly, that's key. I don't think that you can understate how important that is, and having guys that can come in and do that too. So I don't think that you're going to see that top 10 defense that we saw earlier in the year. But if they can kind of, just muddle around top 15, top 20 with the offense they have, I think they're going to give themselves a chance to really be a true postseason contender.
Yeah, I like that observation, and it's something we called, right? We were talking about this 2 weeks ago, like the zones on a clock. Now, I don't think they'll ever get rid of it entirely, because, frankly, I think they do it pretty well. But look, this is something you throw in for 5 minutes or a quarter in the playoffs. You know what I mean? And you keep it sharp, but this is not your bread and butter defense. Okay, so they've got Peyton back. Let's pretend, and let's pretend he makes some kind of impact. What else do they need to be better defensively? What are they missing?
They're missing. I think that it's got to come down to just Anthony Simons and Damian Lillard and those guys just continuing to take on that onus. Understanding that it's one thing to be an offensive star, it's another to be a two-way player that can be exploited, that you can't pick on and take matchups. So it'd be fun to see, in particular, this Denver matchup tonight, because in that first game, I noticed that they had kind of targeted Simons a little bit. I don't want to pick on him because he's been sensational. But I think just those guys, the stars, continuing to take on the challenge of being great defenders, continuing to mix up when they put Nurkic. Sometimes they run him in the drops. Sometimes they bring him up to the level of the screen. So just being versatile with the matchups, opportunities, and defending the three-point line. I think that's the biggest thing for them right now at this point in time.
Yeah, although I would also add, what I'm really missing as the season goes along is shot blocking. There's just not a lot of intimidation factor in the middle, and that's not Nurkic's fault. It's not in his portfolio. Never has been. I'm not faulting Yusuf Nurkic. Hear that clearly. But I can't help but think like some intimidation factor in the middle would be nice, right? Because I think the Blazers rely on Nurkic to help. They seldom rely on him to stop somebody, right? But he's a good help defender. If they had a help defender who could also swat away shots, who made you think twice, who made you hesitate a little bit, I think that would shore up a lot of problems, and that would then allow some of the wings to extend further. To me, it looks like even when they're defending, and I know they're not, the guards aren't great defenders, but it looks like they're always kind of halfway looking over their shoulder. Like there's a little bit of hesitation, there's a little bit of unsurety. I would love to see them just go out there and be able to go all out, knowing if this doesn't work, somebody's behind me who's going to erase this.
And the crazy thing is they have the athleticism to do it. When you're putting out a lineup with Jeremy Grant and Justice Winslow and guys like that, you've got players that can go attack the ball at the high point and get a block. But I think their best defense has really been their offense at this point in time. Part of me kind of wonders what they can do as far as free agency. There's a guy out there that maybe you can bring in as an intimidator. I don't know. I just watching the Pacers in the Jazz game, watching Walker Kessler get blocks and Jalen Smith. I couldn't help but think like, man, what if the Blazers had that? A bona fide rim protector that made you think twice about coming to the rim. It hasn't been an issue that I've worried too much about, but I definitely see where you're coming from. Is there somebody you think that they can probably go after and maybe adjust that a little bit?
I've been looking because I wrote that article a couple days ago, that gave the archetype, and people are like, well, who are you going to get? Yeah, I know. That's the tough part. But the archetype I had in there was Rudy Gobert, which obviously you can't get at this point. But to understand, narrow down some of the skill set, you don't need a jack of all trades at center. But space eating, shot blocking in the middle with some mobility, and offensive rebounding. Is there someone out there with that skill set? Well, I bet you could find some centers out there, and I bet you wouldn't even have to trade away to get them, because centers are, not high on the value list anymore. I love Drew Eubanks, and I love his hustle, but he doesn't quite bring that element, And I don't think they should get rid of Drew either. But where is that guy out there where you go, okay, in the G League or somewhere, you go, okay, this guy's going to swat shots. This guy's going to be my backstop just in the lane. I don't know. I have to think that's gettable. I just haven't been able to do to figure out quite who that is yet.
It's funny you bring up Drew Eubanks. This has nothing to do with the defense, but I was watching him play and I thought about it. I have never seen Drew Eubanks take a two-handed shot ever. It's always the little floater in the paint or I don't know what it is, but he took a shot. They gave him the ball at the half court line for a 3-pointer, and he did a spin and then did a one-handed hook shot over his shoulder from 50 feet away. I've never seen him take a two-handed shot. He's an awesome player, but it was one of those things that kind of stuck out to me that I've never seen that from him. I don't know. It was just kind of funny to me seeing that.
No, and it's funny because you look at Eubanks and you go, this ain't right? I mean, this is, he says, who is this? And then you realize that he shoots literally 800% from the field. And you go, dude, I'm not going to argue with you. You just go, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to mess with you. I'm not even going to look at you. All I'm going to do is put you in. You go play. We're good. Drew is near perfect in that kind of role, that second, third center role.
He's an awesome player. I think he's definitely – I wrote for the Spurs before I wrote for the Blazers, and I kind of knew a little bit about that. But just the fact that he's been able to sustain that to this level, you can only get by so far with energy. But he's made himself a nightly rotation fixture. And I just like the way the Blazers have their depth lined up at that center position with Jabari Walker coming up. He's started to slip up just a little bit in terms of his play a little bit to me. Greg Brown, I think he had some nice minutes in that. It was at the Utah game where he hit a 3-pointer, made some decent defensive plays, but in between Nurkic, Eubanks, Grant, all those guys, I think you've got a nice core. I think you add one more to that, one more defensive-minded player we talked about. I think it's key, but definitely it could be a lot worse, for this Blazers team for sure.
Which brings up to me, and again, I promise, folks, we'll get to Damian Lillard, but Justice Winslow, how has he looked the last few games to you?
I think it's kind of similar to what we talked about before. It's just he's one of those guys where his impact didn't really show up. And they kind of talked about this on the Blazers feed where he had 2 points in, I think, 39 minutes. But he rebounded well. He defended well. He just does so many other things that you can kind of forgive him if his shot's not there. I think he takes a tad bit too many of those corner 3-pointers. Even being a Blazers supporter, I don't think they're ever really going to go in like that. But just the energy that he brings, I think is huge for this team. So I can't really complain too much about how he does it. I like the way he played in that 4 big lineup I brought up with Nurkic, Grant, Wofford, and himself. They played really, really well on the glass. And that size advantage is key. And the fact that he's able to play point guard and do different things, I think it helps the Blazers schematically where they can run Dame off ball. They can run horn sets with a guard on guard screen, whatever you want to do with it. So he's a luxury to have at this point in time. And I think he's outpunched his weight in terms of what we kind of expected from him at this point in his career.
I agree with that. He's just looked a titch off the last couple games to me. And I don't know. Everybody gets a weekend, right? So it's all right. But he's one of the guys I got my eye on a little bit. I guess my standards are too high. You know how you get surprised? You eat at a restaurant the first time and it's way better than you expected. And you go, damn, that's the best restaurant in the world. And the 12th time you're like, okay, this is good, And it's maybe I will admit, maybe I'm doing that with Justice Winslow. But just the timing on the passes, as you mentioned, the shot selection, I think even a little bit the defense, although I still think that he's head and shoulders above most of his teammates, so I'm not complaining about that. But I'm interested to see if the Blazers can keep him engaged and in the flow, especially as they start adding players back, like Damian Lillard, and if Gary Payton II comes in, and when Nasir Little comes back. Does Winslow still have that same cachet? We'll see. Now, Dame. Okay, so talk to me about, I mean, obviously there's the Indiana game, but just talk to me in general about the difference that Dame brings. We've been talking all season about how this team has done pretty good without him, and Anthony Simons has been great. Jeremy Grant's been spectacular. Everybody's been doing great. It's been good, right? But Dame still makes a difference, right?
Absolutely. I think it's just the presence. You know, we talked about it a little bit last week. I think it's a situation where it's like you're on the playground getting bullied, and now you got some reinforcements. You got guys that are going to come in and come and save the day for you.
So Dame is the big brother, right? Dame is your big brother. Yeah. Okay, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's funny. That's awesome.
He's an awesome player. I think you can just see the different swagger that these guys have, and I don't want to be negative, but I kind of wonder how Anthony Simons kind of sustains that aggressiveness when Lillard's there, because he's a different player without Lillard. I think when he's, you know, the number one guy. But just the way they play when they have him on the floor, you know, in the fourth quarter, a lot more calm, a lot more composed. I thought Lillard looked great in that Pacers game at times. And just having him on the floor. We talked about it with the clutch stats. You know, they go from being the fourth best fourth quarter scoring team to the 26th when he's not there. So that's a huge difference, astronomical difference. So just having him on the floor, he doesn't even have to score. Just him being there, his presence, opening up different opportunities for guys to score, because defense isn't going to take it. They're not going to be lax on him. So having that all-star is a luxury. It's an absolute luxury. So that's probably the best I can put it.
Yeah, that fourth quarter scoring, I mean, underline that. Look, Dame goes hot and cold sometimes, and frankly, Dame lets other people score. In the first three quarters, he's kind of almost agnostic sometimes. Hey, Simon's got it going, go. And Dame will still look for you in the fourth. He doesn't, take over overtly. But there is that sense where that's his time, and he's going to judge the situation. And if this team needs him, he's going to be there. I don't think any other player has that quite that way. Simons has been trying. Now, Simons has the pattern of that, but the execution of it and kind of the heart and the positive feedback loop still needs some development time.
I would agree with that. It's almost like trying to create an encore of a great movie. It's tough to replicate all of the great parts. And I think it's kind of easy to forget. Simons is 23 years old. Lillard was such a poised player at that age that it's tough to replicate that completely. But he's done a great job of it, and it wouldn't surprise me to see both of those guys in the All-Star conversations in February. And with Lillard, he's still the best player on his team. Even when he's not 100%, I think people would know, and they respect that they know when he's playing, it's a different team, played a different pace, just a different calmness, a different composure. So it's just can't say enough about it, and it's just great to see him healthy. And you just hope that he sustains that, because it's been a rough last couple of months for him in terms of just health wise.
Yeah, maybe the comparison is Simons is a really good Beatles tribute band. Okay, yeah, no, that's the music. That's exactly it. But Lillard is John, Paul, George, and Ringo, right? Okay, so you look like him, you sound like him, but there's something just a little special about the original, huh? So, yeah. And by the way, do you expect this to have... How much do you expect this to impact their winning? I mean, we'll look at the schedule in a minute, but would you say that Dame being back is going to prevent the kind of big losing streak that we saw while he was injured?
Absolutely. I think because superstar players like that, they have the ability to take over a game. They're not to put the team on their backs and they're not going to lose this game tonight. And Dame's been doing that year after year after year. And you look at the schedule, they like I said, they've gotten past the toughest part of it. They had the toughest 20-game schedule to start the year off. So now they're at a point now where they've got a long road stand coming up in December, the end of December. But they've got some home games, some winnable home games. And I don't really see too many games on that schedule up until, late January that they really like, oh my goodness, I don't think they're going to win that game. So it's going to be a great chance for them to get their win totals together, and having Lillard there is going to make a big difference with that.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm going to shade it just slightly for me. for two reasons. First of all, even with Lillard there, they were winning mostly close games. So we need to see them like win decisively and consistently before I'm ready. And again, I don't want to slight Dame at all. I think he makes an enormous difference. But how much that translates into wins, I think it's most likely. What you just said is most likely to happen. I have a little percentage out there like, okay, let's see, because those games were close. Here's the other thing, though, about the Blazers in the last decade. When you put their backs against the wall, they will generally play above their heads. As soon as they relax, they stink. All right? And I did hear a fair amount of talk this week in the locker room, thanks to the Oregonian and Jason Quick and all those people who are in there, quoting the Blazers saying, woo, we made it past the tough spot in our schedule. Woo, it's easy from now on. And it's just like, okay, hold on, time out. I get it. Utah win, Indiana win. Love it, love it, love it. Go out and win 8 or 10. Okay, let's not take the pedal off the gas here, because you know what? You're still a couple games above 500. You're still only 3 games out of first place, so that kind of success is attainable. Let's really, really want it and go get it.
I see what you're saying. I think you can look at both sides of the spectrum on that. You know what I'm saying? They got a really young team. You've kind of brought up that average age. I think it's like 24 or something like that. So it's definitely easy for you to kind of take your foot off the gas pedal when you start to get past the tougher parts of the schedule. But at the same time, like with the way the Western Conference is right now, 1 through 13 is separated by like 6 games. So you lose 3 in a row, you might be in a play-in. So I think that they're going to see that and kind of adjust to that part of it. And I think that they've got a nice mixture of players that, like Josh Hart, I talk about it all the time. Josh Hart is one of the best hustle players in the game. He's never played a postseason game, so you know he's chomping at the bit to get to that moment. And I think that it's going to motivate guys like that. Damian Lillard, I think he understands what he has with this team. So having a vocal leader like that, NBA.com, the GMs, they ask at the end of the year, who's the best leader in the NBA? So most of them say Damian Lillard. So you have a situation like that. I think it's going to be a great chance for him to kind of show that part of him. And Chauncey Billups, he's a guy that played in the NBA. He's a player's coach. He knows, how easy it is to become lax. So having all these different variables going with them, I think it's going to help them a little bit. I could be a little bit over optimistic, but I think they're going to find a way to kind of weather that storm. There's going to be some of those games that you should win that you think back on, but even the close games, I think it's sustainable with a guy like Lillard, but it might not be without him. So I look forward to it.
I think you're going to be right in the end, but part of it might be because this is a different team, and I don't mean more talented team. I mean, look, they have a lot of young players, right? So theoretically, Billups could go, all right, we're slumping a little bit, and I get it. But hey, you guys don't have your contracts yet. You guys are trying to prove something. In fact, you guys want playing time. Now, you go. This is your time to run, and you look at the Shaden Sharps, and you look at Keon Johnson, and even Nos, guys who have something to prove, where that was very much not the case under the final years of Terry Stotts, because you always got those veteran mercenaries who are in their 13th year of their career, or at least their 9th, and just like, I got it. I got this contract. That's why I'm here, and I'm good to go. So maybe they can play that dynamic a little bit, young and hungry, to get you past the look. If it's oatmeal again, if you're starving, that oatmeal's pretty good, right? So go get it.
I think you make a great point with that, and I'm just hoping that the on-court kind of aspect kind of plays into the scheduling, how it goes. And what I mean by that is, like, Chauncey Billups, he's proven that he's a guy that he's going to mix things up. They were up 16 against Indiana, and he runs out of zone. Like, who runs a zone when you're up 16? Just change the rhythm of it. So having a coach is going to keep you on your toes, keep you surprised. I think it's going to be really important. And as you mentioned, the Blazers had guys coming in and out of the lineup, so some nights you get 30 minutes, some nights you get 10. So I think that the players are going to kind of, really focus in on their rotation, their minutes, and try to make the most of it. And having a situation where you don't know how much time you're going to get, I think it's going to be very important. And I think it's going to be something that kind of wills this team to play with urgency, play with an aggressiveness, and focus in night out against a lot of Western Conference teams coming up.
Yeah, and keep in mind that this is where tiebreakers are won or lost, right? You got obviously division winners, but then also conference record. And it looks very much like the West is going to be. Now, it's not going to stay the same as it is right now, obviously. As you said, the Blazers are 3 games out of 14th and 3 games out of 1st. Okay, so, it's like that's going to change. But there are going to be a lot of teams there in the middle. And the distance between, say, 3rd and 9th might be pretty tight. So you definitely want to win these games that are going to provide you tie-breaking edges. Obviously, you want to win every game, but some of these are super important. For instance, and let's talk about this upcoming schedule here. Tonight, we have the Denver Nuggets. They are playing right after we record here, so we won't hit that too hard. Just give us, what do you think are the keys here, and how do you think the Blazers will do?
I've talked a little bit about Anthony Simons in the first quarters of games. Hasn't been as great compared to the second, third, and fourth quarters, but just based off the confidence he's going to have after that first game they played, I'm looking for him to kind of set the tone here. And the Blazers, they enter tonight 5-5 at home. That's the one thing I've been looking at. I want to see this team become a better. They've got such a great home court advantage with the fans and just the vibe that the Motor Center has. So 4 straight games at home, a great opportunity to win all 3 of those. They got Denver tonight, Minnesota without Cat back to back. So great opportunity here tonight to try to get on top. I think they get a win here today, just riding the momentum. Damian Lillard's first home game, or second home game back. So I'm looking for them to get maybe a 10-point win.
Yeah, and Denver's been a little bit hobbled. And the thing with Denver is their defense has not been good. And that's been a major change. And you wonder if they're looking at Jeremy Grant going, wish we still had him. In any case, so yeah. And if you don't, look, here's another thing. If you don't defend the Blazers, you're done. Right? If you got a bad defense, Portland will roast you. And I said the other night, it was 3 or 4 games ago. I can't remember which team it was exactly, but they threw a zone against the Blazers. I was like, no. You don't. That may look clever, and you may be going tit for tat there, but you do not want to throw a zone against Portland because they can park Nurkic right in the middle of it if they need to, or Simons can shoot on the angle all night long if they need to, or someone can drive and dish to the side because you're collapsed with the zone. You cannot, and especially they were a little bit weak with it. They were a little bit sloppy. It's like, oh, they're going to change that in about a nanosecond. And they did, right? So you're chalking up a Denver win, and then you've got home back-to-back Saturday and Monday against the Timberwolves. You think they win both of those?
I'm going for the juggler. I'm going to say they beat Denver. They beat Minnesota back-to-back. I think they beat San Antonio. And we come into this podcast next week, and the Blazers are 17-11, something like that. I'm going to go with that. The Dallas game kind of scares me. I think Dallas kind of has their number. They can hit shots when they need to. But over these next 4, I'm going with the Blazers to go a perfect 4-0. Kind of rock the momentum with having their leader back and guys just continuing to reestablish that chemistry that they had in the early season. So I'm going to go with the win. I'm going to go with a win over Denver, win over Minnesota, and a win at San Antonio.
Marlo's going for the Grand Slam. 4-0 this week. All right. Well, and we should point out that San Antonio game begins the Blazers' next extended road trip from mid-December through Christmas. They're going to be on the road. San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Oklahoma City twice there, and then Denver 2 days before Christmas. Look, Dallas and Denver, you've got to think are tough, although Dallas probably tougher at this point. The rest of those games are kind of winnable. Do you think there's a chance that the Blazers could be on the verge of kind of a special run here, one of those that, turns their season back around?
I kind of err on the side of caution when it comes to those 6-game road trips or long road trips. They leave on the 14th and they don't come back home until the 26th. So that's a 12-day. You don't get to sleep in your bed for 12 days. It's going to be hard for you to get going with that. And these are games that, against teams that the Blazers historically they've had some trouble with. Even Oklahoma City, they've not been as pristine against Oklahoma City as they maybe should be. And this is a team that's really starting to find their groove with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, guys like that. So I can see them splitting one of those. I can see them losing in Dallas. So 3-3, 4-2, I think is more optimistic. And during the Blazers' last big road trip like that, they talked about that. They went 4-2 and they were like, man, we could have went 5-1, 6-0. So I think at this point in the season, if you go 4-2 on a 6-game road trip, you're pretty satisfied with that. So, I don't want to get too unrealistic with it.
Well, hey, that would qualify though. If according to the book, according to Marlowe, if they go 4-0 at home here and then go 4-2, right? That's 8 out of 10. That would be a season-defining stretch, right? So, I mean, so you just kind of predicted it. So, I mean, close anyway. So we'll see. Last time we thought they couldn't sink. Last time we gave them a floor, they went below the floor. So we won't do that. But we'll hope that they get close to where you were, 9-3, 8-2. That would set them up nicely for a run in January, in which they have quite a few home games. Granted, some of them are tough, but they get to spend a lot of January at the Moda Center. And if they come into that month on a high, there's a non-zero chance that high could get higher. So, anything else we need to know before we depart and embark on the week ahead?
I can't think of anything else. Just excited to see how they continue to keep the ball rolling after a 2-game winning streak. It's been a while since they've been on a winning streak, so just being able to say that, I think it's just good to say. Hopefully, they can keep that going. And
no more injuries. We should say that too. Okay, look, you look at the Blazers injury report and you need like 3 tweets to get it all in, right? There aren't enough characters. So that's the other caveat. I mean, Lillard stays healthy. You don't lose Simons or Grant, obviously. Those are the big 3 right now. And you can't entirely lose Nurkic either for a long stretch. So that's 4 that are super important. We didn't talk about it too much. You did a little bit, but Josh Hart is a quiet key to this team. You can tell when he's fatigued because they just don't win as easily. They don't play as well. So that's all 5 starters playing a pretty key role right now. They got to stay healthy if we want them to be as good as they need to be. They don't have a lot of wiggle room there. Absolutely. I agree with that. Josh Hart's probably my favorite player on this team just because of the energy that he brings. And it's infectious. Guys see that and they play harder. I can't really say much more than that. I just appreciate what he does on a night-to-night basis, playing through injuries, playing through fatigue, and putting his body on the line for the team every night. That man is a bigger deal than you think he is, especially with the stats this year. Yeah, very good. All right. For Marlow Ferguson, I am Dave Deckard. All of you out there, don't stop believing, and we will see how the Blazers do this week. Write it down, 4-0. Marlow guaranteed it. Hope your holiday season is going well, and we'll see you again soon.